Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Welcome. You're listening to the Renegade River Show. My name is Mike Hewitt, and I'm in the studio with Jim Riley.
Hey, good afternoon, folks.
And on the line with us is Barb Vanderveen, and Barb is the Republican 2nd Congressional District Chairperson. Barb, welcome to the Renegade River Show.
Thanks. Happy to be on.
I appreciate your calling in. Just for listeners, are you still up on the Mackinac Island, Barb?
I'm on my way home from Mackinac Island.
Very, very nice. And what I'm hoping to get you to do today for us is give the folks, well, a little bit of background probably to start with, if we could. So some listeners that may not know what the Mackinac Republican Leadership Conference is. Tell us about it. What is it, Barb?
It's every 2 years, so a biannual get-together that we have with grassroots and leadership in the Republican Party for the state of Michigan. And it's just a time of regrouping and networking and firing up the troops as we head into a major election for 14.
Very
and
nice.
then for 16 for sure.
Now, it's always located on Mackinac Island. Is that right, at the Grand Hotel?
As far as I've known about it, so maybe in the past it wasn't, but as far as I've known, it has been, yes.
Now, I've not been in a couple of them. I think the last one I attended was in 2006, and I've been to a couple of them. But it's fairly, as I recall it, most of the elected Republican leadership, along with grassroots voters, electorate, precinct delegates like myself and Jim Riley. Is that a fair statement?
Yep, it is, absolutely.
Okay.
And a lot of college kids are over there as well. It was very exciting to see the number of youth that were there.
Yeah, that part is the future, because I think the other side of the political spectrum likes to claim the youth for themselves, and I got to tell you, that's not what I see when I'm out traveling.
Yeah, that's not what I see either. When I visit the different county parties that I'm involved with in the 2nd District, but that's why it's so exciting on the island. And I think the fact that the Republican Party is starting to finally get up with the times as far as technology is going to help tremendously.
Absolutely, with that. Now, were there a lot of speakers that were engaging the folks up there?
More speakers than you could possibly get to hear. There was something going pretty much from 8 o'clock in the morning till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Yeah, I saw on Facebook yesterday, actually early this morning, where someone was talking about she was waiting for Senator Rand Paul. It was midnight, and he hadn't appeared yet. So it sounds like...
Oh, they kept him so busy.
Yeah, that's what I got the impression from just reading comments, that they had that fella all over the island.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, well, what was Governor Snyder there and folks like that?
Governor Snyder, Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley, Secretary of State Ruth Johnson, Congressman, state representatives, state senators, and then, of course, the national names that they brought in: Rand Paul, Bobby Jindal, Karl Rove, Governor Wallace.
I would have liked to have heard Governor Jindal talk.
Oh, my word. He is what did it for me. I mean, I came out of that thinking, wow, I think we have a chance to have a really exciting candidate for the next presidential election. Rand Paul was good as well, but right. I love Bobby Jindal.
Now, were there those two folks are obviously contemplating a run, but were there other people there, Barb, that you could guess were considering a run?
Yeah, Governor Walker was there from Wisconsin.
Oh yeah. Yeah, just let me just kind of dovetail a short story in, if I might. I spent a little less than a year over at over in Green Bay, Wisconsin, doing some work for an organization, but I happened to be there right during the time that the recall campaign was going on. And Barb, that had to be the single ugliest politics that I've ever seen in my life. I'd get off the plane in Milwaukee, and each time I went, by the way, when I'd fly in, I'd land in Milwaukee and then drive up to Green Bay. But each time I would land, I would be greeted at the end of the when you're walking up the ramp from the plane into the terminal. I'd be greeted by signature people that were trying to gather petitions.
Yep.
And I'd say, "Hey, I'm from Michigan. That's okay. Sign here." And I'd say, "Hey, I'm a leader in the Tea Party movement, so probably that isn't going to happen today." Okay.
Yeah.
But at any rate, that was good times. But I would have liked to have heard him speak. I certainly saw him deal with some tough circumstances while I was in Wisconsin.
Right. Governor Thune was there as well, and Ryan Stramus, the chair of the National Republican Party, was there. Our National Committee man, Dave Agema, National Committee woman, Terry Land. And then, of course, the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader, Randy Richardville. So lots of names.
Tell me something. Does it for Terry Land, as in terms of her being a candidate for U.S. Senate here in Michigan? Were there any other candidates, primary Republican candidates, looking to get in that race that showed up and spoke?
No one else that spoke, and Terry didn't actually speak in the capacity as a candidate. She spoke as our National Committee woman. But Rob Steele was up there, networking, because it's a really great place to meet a lot of people in one small area.
No question. We've had Dr. Steele on this show before, and there's one intelligent fellow right there, I'll tell you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, no question about that. Well, tell me, were there any surprises that were this weekend you discovered?
Not from my perspective. I guess maybe the media was a little surprised that the Tea Party did not come out with their surprise, quote, quote, candidate to run against Governor Snyder. But from my perspective, there was no surprises, no.
Coming up to this, I think and where that comes from, frankly, is from people like me. That said, I think there appears to have been a lot of division. There appears to have been a lot of division in the party, and I'm wondering, did the conference help to calm some of that?
I'm not sure if it did or not. That was certainly a focus. I don't think there was a speaker up there that didn't talk about unity and how important it was, and that was across the board in every meeting, no matter who was the speaker. And it's true. I was talking before we came on air with Jim Riley, and we can't win if we're divided. So, but whether or not, it actually sunk in remains to be seen, I guess.
Well, Barb, there was a discussion. Apparently, this wasn't set up on the stage. It was widely reported, and it might not have even hit you folks up there in Mackinac. But Senator Rand Paul had a get-together at some point over the last couple days with reporters. And at that time, he said that the way it's written here was he conceded, quote, "We probably can't defeat or get rid of Obamacare," and then went on in a very pragmatic and I would say probably practically minded analysis of what was likely to go forward. But here in Michigan, we do have a very serious dispute. Certainly, a lot of issues matter, but the single most important, most recent one was the passing of the expansion of Medicaid here in the state.
Right.
What kind of discussions came about? What did you hear that was of note?
Actually, at the dinner table last night, we were talking about the fact that conversations about that were pretty much non-existent. Everybody sort of steered away from that conversation.
I think that my impression of it from some of the folks that I've talked to was that the idea or the hope was just to present a united front and to deal with these type of internal party battles on a more internal basis, for lack of better words.
Right. That was definitely the conversation. The analogy was made that we are like a family, and like any family, you're going to have disagreements and points that you just vehemently oppose each other on, but you have those conversations around the kitchen table, and then when you go out in public, you put out a united front as a family that's standing together.
Absolutely.
And that, I think, was accomplished this weekend.
You know, recently, Barb, I've been listening to a lot of other talk shows just to try to educate myself on different ways to do things, and part of that process has been to force myself to sit through some left-wing radio shows. and you know me pretty well. That's tough for me to do. So
yeah.
Well, that's why God invented beer, right?
So,
there was plenty of that on the island.
Oh, I'm sure of it. But you know, the one thing I've taken from listening to all of the progressive radio shows, though, seriously, is that the media likes to focus on the idea that the Republican Party, and as Jim alluded to here on a state level, even that there's a lot of pushback and a lot of challenge for which ideas are going to surface and steer the party. But the irony to that is that while the media is focusing on that with glee, if you listen to the progressive radio show hosts, there's a lot of that going on the left side also, and there are
absolutely
radio show hosts on the left calling for third parties on their side. And I say that because to your point, I think it's important that we stay united, but not. And I'm not telling folks to silence themselves at all. Anyone that knows me knows that that's not me. But at the same time, when it's all said and done, we get through the primaries. It's time to be the Republican Party and win.
Yes, absolutely. But that was another conversation that several of the speakers brought up that I thought was really good, and that is that it's time to be bold. We do not tell our story as Republicans well enough. People don't know that they're Republicans because they don't know what the Republicans stand for, because all they hear it from is from the biased media, by and large. Yeah. And that we as Republicans have to do a better job of saying, this is what we're about. What do you think about that? And it's just a time to be bold and confident in what the Republican Party stands for.
Yeah, Barb, I think you're spot on with that. One of the things that's concerned me over the last couple months is I've even heard well-placed Republican leaders, people that shouldn't make the statement I'm getting ready to share, where they say, you know what, I don't know what the Republican Party stands for anymore. And,
right.
And I think so. We're kind of going through a little bit of an evolution, and we've got to get to the point where we're contrasting, not trying to copy. And I think that's that's what's lost our way a little bit.
Yes, and we're not always on the defense. When we're not saying, well, we're against that, we're saying what we are for.
I think that's absolutely right. Well, I got to tell you, it's like when I look and say, okay, Mike, talking to myself, what brought me to politics? Actually, forget the Republican Party for a minute, but what caused me to be engaged in the process? And it was Reaganism, not even Reagan, but Reaganism.
Right. Yes.
I mean, a positive future. The city on all of the things that went forward are looking forward to a strong America, and I think along the path right now, if I look across the nationscape, either party or independence, there's a certain set of unease that everyone has, and not everyone can articulate what it is, including me. But it's there, and I think the answer to that, or the cure to that, is to step forward with a vision that I don't want to say Reagan-esque because I'm not looking backwards, but one that's very positive, that shows that there can be a brilliant and bright future for our state and for America.
Well, I have a lot of positive news that we got over the weekend that I would love to share some of it with you. One of the things that was said was, this was in the discussion on the freedom to work. There was a panel of people that were infinitely and deeply involved in passing a freedom of work in our state. And one of them is a UAW member. And one of the comments was made that 40% of union members, once they understand that this isn't about the ability to be able to collectively bargain, but it's about your freedom to be able to choose whether or not you want to pay the dues based on what the union can offer you. It's about freedom for the unions to say, well, this is what we're going to offer you for your dues, so please, be happy to pay us your dues. That 40% of union members, and this is from a UAW member, 40% of union members we're happy to support freedom of work.
Oh.
And because of freedom to work, and he said, as he goes around the nation, because he talks around the nation, he said people used to say, "Oh, you're from Michigan." And he said, now they say, "Oh, you're from Michigan."
You betcha. Absolutely.
Representative Shirkey said that there has been more business investments in Michigan than any other state since they have passed freedom to work.
You know,
that in Site Selection, let me show you this one more thing.
Sure.
In Site Selection magazine, where we weren't even on the list before, we are number 4.
Wow.
Those are positive things to share about what the Republicans have done for the state of Michigan. The nation is watching Michigan.
Well, you know, I would just add that you know, many of us, certainly in the Tea Party and on the right, the conservative side of the Michigan Republican Party, can easily spout off votes that we disagree with. But it's little question that this Republican governor, this Republican House, and this Republican state Senate have been very, very successful in voting for and enacting a whole bucket full of laws that are very, very pro-business, pro-taxpayer, pro-citizen, and frankly, pro-fiscal sanity. And certainly the freedom to work is one of the most important. I would like to see a much greater emphasis on the successes of these Republicans as a group, so that when we get together with those of us who are on the right, who are kind of grousing about a particular vote, that we do have a handy, quick list of this very long list of successes, because it's there.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that came out this weekend. Governor Snyder was part of, you know, a lot of the discussions that were up there. And during one of the ones, he reaches into his suit pocket and he pulled up this flip chart, and it's probably about 5 feet long, and it's not great big huge letters. It's bullet point listed of all the positive things that this administration and our representatives and our senators have accomplished to move Michigan forward.
Now that's
they also
great.
Came out with a video that's on YouTube that also talks about it, and the purpose of that is share it with your friends. We have a good message to get out there.
Now, is that the one nerd or one?
Yes.
Okay, the governor is a nerd. Okay.
Yep.
Very nice, Barb. We're going to have to slip to a break, but I'm hoping you'll be able to. I need you to stay over for a little bit with us when we get through the breaks, because I've still got some questions here in my bucket for you. Okay.
Okay.
We'll be right back, folks.
Fiber, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
The Talk of Muskegon. News Talk 1090, WKBZ.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Renegade River Show, and I'm in the studio with Jim Riley, and we are on the phone with Barb Vanderveen, who is the chairperson for the Republican 2nd Congressional District. Barb, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
I got to tell you what nobody can see while we're heading towards coming back live. Jim Riley, I look over, and he's literally got a plastic bag over his head, pulled down to his shoulders.
And I didn't put it on my head myself. It was my co-host.
But listen, it helped him. He looked better. Anyway, when we left off, one of the things I wanted to bring a little bit of light to a little bit, you touched on the UAW member sitting there at the table with you in some forum there. And
Yes.
one of the things I think is important for a lot of folks to understand is that because a person is a union member does not automatically mean that they're a hard left progressive. And
Absolutely.
I think that the media, the way they've kind of enveloped and hugged the UAW and other unions implies that. But part of freedom is that the union leadership now is going to be forced to listen closer to what its union membership is wanting it to do. And so there's been a lot of folks paying union dues where those dues were being invested in politics that are very contrary to their own personal political ideologies. And so this new law that Michigan has embraced is going to help union members actually get represented. So from that standpoint, kudos to our leadership. But on a different note, while we were off the air, folks, Barb was telling us a story about church. And if you would, Barb, tell us a little bit more about that.
I'd love to. And the last thing I did before I left the island this morning was go to the church service. They have a non-denominational church service. And what you're not going to see on the news is Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley playing the piano and leading the songs, Representative Shirkey, Representative Pulaski doing the special music, Congressman Malberg bringing the word, Congressman Huizinga reading the scriptures, and a whole room full of Republicans that care about our state and our country together, trusting in God. It was really, really moving.
Very, very nice. Any special messages that they shared in that?
Congressman Walworth, he asked the question, what is the command that's out in the words the most? And people were saying it's to love. And he said, no, actually, it's not to fear. And he said, if we look at circumstances around us and things that are going on, we could be a fearful people. But we don't have to be because we know who's in control. And that was just a good word to go off the island with.
Very, very, very nice. How many people were in attendance of that?
At the church service?
Yeah.
100, 150
Oh,
maybe.
so that's a pretty darn good gathering then.
Well, it is for 8:30 on Sunday morning when it's amazing how tired you can get in a day and a half.
Oh, no, I remember that part very well. I thought the boat rode high. I thought the drive home I'm going, holy mackerel, am I tired?
Right.
That's one of my memories from the couple times I've been up there. Any high points, Barb, beyond that messages that are important for listeners that couldn't make it?
Well, for me, the high point of the different meetings that I went to, and if you talk to somebody else, you might get a different perspective because different people, like there was a gal that roomed with me from Muskegon, Talia Greavy. She went to totally different meetings that I went to, but of the meetings that I went to, the most inspiring was Bobby Jindal's speech.
I'm wondering if it was recorded for YouTube where I might be able to get it.
Oh, I'm sure it'll all be available.
Very neat. Hey, on a slightly different note, kind of a personal thing.
Okay.
What's the temperature up there on the island? Was it cold?
Yes, 56.
Well, and the reason I'm asking is because you and I exchanged some text messages in advance of this show, and one of the things that you told me was Secretary Johnson was out kayaking. Did I read that right?
I was just going to tell you that, yes. This morning at 9:30, she dressed up in her neoprene outfit and took her Secretary of State ExpressSOS.com kayak out into the water. So
Wow.
she took a MERS reporter with her. So check out the MERS report for reports of his experience.
Well, when you were saying that, I thought, well, that can't possibly actually happen because you were telling me in advance. I thought it's got to be 50-some degrees up there.
Yes,
but it
would be very cold if they fell in.
I was just going to say, from my perspective, the last time I went on a kayak, I made it about 4 paddles before I tipped over, just like the guy on Laugh-In did on the bicycle. I mean, I got 4 paddles and just tipped over.
She has outriggers.
Okay.
She has outriggers, so it's a little bit more difficult to tip over, but she still could. But it's a calm day, so she should be fine. I
was very, very impressed with the secretary doing that. So good for her. And now the MERS reporter, I don't feel real bad for. I mean, but nothing negative against MERS, but I think the world of Secretary Johnson. So I was just very impressed that she was doing that. Hey, Barb, how come you're not out there with them?
She didn't ask me to.
Oh, you sound brokenhearted.
I am.
Very, very nice. Well, now, what's the next local political event for folks that they should be paying attention to with gatherings?
Well,
that kind of thing?
for 2nd District area, which a lot of your listeners would be, we're having a 2nd District meeting on December 5, and the Supreme Court Justice Viviano will be there to speak. And I'm very much hoping that Congressman Huizinga will be there as well. But on a state level, the next big event is December 14th in Lansing. That will be the next state committee meeting.
But one of the things I wanted to have you do while you were on today, Barb, is I think that listeners that are not necessarily directly engaged, at least in the political party process, may not know what a 2nd Congressional District party is. So
Okay.
if you would tell folks what it is that you're talking about.
I would be happy to. The entire state is divided up into congressional regions based on population. And so 2nd Congressional District is Congressman Heisinga's district. You have the 4th Congressional District, which is Congressman Camp's district. No. Yes, that's Camp's. Then you have the 6th, that's Congressman Upton. So it's based on population, and then they're numbered, and the congressmen, which are like your House members. A lot of people don't understand that Congress and House is different than State House. So that's where they come from.
Now, just from a party apparatus, you have a state party, you've got a county party. I think most folks are aware of that, but you're the chairperson for the Congressional District Party, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Which it has 5.5 counties in it.
How come a half a county?
Based on population, they had to split Mason County.
Okay, now your meetings are usually right in the Muskegon area? Is that right?
Yes, they have been. The last meeting we had in Coopersville, we're trying to keep it a little more central for everybody in the district because people are coming all the way down from Lake County. So I wouldn't want to say that they're going to stay in Muskegon, but they have been in Muskegon.
Yeah. Now your last meeting in Coopersville, I was trying to make it to that one, and I was running so late from my store that I got a text when I was about halfway there that told me I was too late. I missed the boat. So
yeah,
but I will be at the next one.
I try not to have them last very long. People have to come a long way, and they have to drive a long way back home, so they don't usually last more than an hour and a half, 2 at the longest. But a lot of helpful information is passed on, and you get to network with a lot of people that really care about our state. And we love visitors.
Well, I'm going to have to make sure I'm there. And then what I'd like to do at some point in the future, Barb, is get you back on and maybe get you right here in the studio with us.
That'd be fun. I'd like that.
Very nice. We're going to go to a break, Barb. I appreciated you joining us today, and I will talk to you during the week.
All right, thanks.
Yep, thank
Bye-bye.
you. Drive careful. Welcome back. You're listening to the Renegade River Show, and now it's just Jim Riley and I in the studio.
Well, we're here with the legendary and yawning Oscar Osbo.
We've got him
the
awake.
youngster.
Yeah, we've stayed awake this time, though. That's not bad.
Well, he's awake barely.
But he is awake, so we must be on fire compared to...
Yes, we are on fire. We are on fire.
Smoking. There you go. Hey, what I wanted to do is kick around a little bit of a different topic, if I might, Jim. Coming up in October, on October 19th, in a little place called Birch Run, Michigan, which is a little bit, I think it's right between Saginaw and Flint.
Home of one of my very good friends, Timmy Cuthbertson.
Yep, that's exactly right. Now, there's a big, gigantic outreach mall. Not outreach, what do they call that?
Outlets.
Outlets mall.
Honey Bunch knows all about the outlets mall down there. Thankfully, I do not.
There you go. At any rate, in that location and on that date, there's going to be an event that's referred to or titled Great Lakes Emergency Preparedness Expo. Have you ever heard of it?
I have, because I am one of your Facebook friends, so I did get a little bit of a heads up on it earlier in the week.
I got to tell you, I'm a little bit excited about it.
Tell what's it all about? Sup?
I'm going to tell you about it. Here's what. What's that, Oscar?
A little Dionne Warwick going on in the background.
Well, there's a thought. It's Michigan's premier emergency preparedness expo covering the Great Lakes and Midwest. And just reading down the list, it's about food storage and preservation, hunting and survival gear, emergency services, disaster response. In other words, it won't just be preppers or whatever people's imagination is when they hear the title. There'll be fire people there, police, there'll be first responders in general, and there'll be folks like me that have various different stores like Renegade River. I'm one of the speakers at that event. And but beyond that, it's a pretty big deal over there, and I'm pretty ginned up about it. In fact, next week, one of their representatives will be our guest. Then he could probably give you a heck of a lot better description of it. But I wanted to make sure we kicked it around today.
Well, this is a show. What's going to be a 2-day show?
It's one full day show.
One full day. And the people who would attend this is open to the public, right?
Open
Okay.
to the public and free.
And so if I'm interested in what, why would I come to this?
Let's say you were, if you were a police officer,
let's just say I'm a normal person who, it sounds interesting, but I really don't know why I would go.
Oscar, can I refer to him as a normal person? Would that be like a lot?
Well, that's why I said let's say.
Oh, well, just pretend for a minute. If you were a person that said, well, let me give you an example. The other topic I wanted to talk about, so we'll just segue to this and then we'll come back, but this will help answer your question. Ohio State University acquired a military-styled armored truck. Did you see that article?
Yeah, it's like an armored tank.
It's
At Ohio State University, your tax dollars at work. This thing is something you would see in Afghanistan.
It's a 19-ton armored tank. It's designed to withstand ballistic arms fire, minefields, IEDs, and nuclear and biological chemical environments. And I kind of segue to that for just a brief minute, only because some folks will say, Mike, preparedness, isn't that kind of silly? And I say, wait a minute, our governments, both state and federal, and our universities are preppers. How come we're not?
Well, they're preparing apparently against us. I don't know how you're going to prepare against a tank.
Yeah, listen, I'm not a conspiratorialist, but when you sit down and you say, wow, they've bought billions of rounds. We always hear about ammunition shortage. If anyone's in the, especially if you're getting ready to go deer hunting, good luck with finding ammo on any kind of consistent basis. But we always hear about the ammo shortages for the last 7 or 8, 9 months now. But the government didn't buy up 1.6 million like it's reported in the news. They bought up many billions. And then they're buying things like this for colleges. And there's, 5,400 variations of this armored tank that were bought by Homeland Security for domestic use. And so I only dovetail that for a moment, only to say, what in the world is our governments and our institutions of higher education thinking? I think that's kind of fearsome. I do, folks.
Well, I'm not, again, I'm still to have my unanswered question, which is why someone off the street would go to this. But I'd like to add this. I have been very concerned about our electricity grid, the electricity that comes from the power plants into our homes. And I am looking for information to put together a generator for my home. And the options are just amazingly diverse, so it's going to take some time to research it. But I'm going to do it because I do believe that we are going to face some very serious electrical problems coming down the road. Now, that said, here in Muskegon County, we were told a couple years ago that the Cobb plant, which is the main Consumers Energy electrical generating plant here for the county, it's a coal-fired plant, and the good leaders, the mouthpieces of Consumers Energy, announced that in 2014 that plant would be closing down. They gave a little bit of time, a couple of years, to prepare for it. Now, as it turns out, Consumers Energy was the number one, that plant, the Cobb plant, was the number one tax-paying entity. In other words, it paid the most property taxes of any entity in Muskegon, the city of Muskegon, and I believe it was the number 4 highest taxpayer in the county. And, of course, it had numerous employees and did any number of other benefits. But, of course, the most important benefit was in providing electrical power to the businesses and the governmental offices and, of course, the citizens of the county. Now, they said they had to shut this plant down at serious negative effects to our county because of the president's EPA requirement for CO2 reduction. Now, we were just told earlier this week that they're not going to close it down until 2016 and perhaps later. Now, there was at least no explanation that made any sense to me that I saw in the local newspaper or on M Live.
I think they're hoping that a real American president is elected in 2016 and they can just move on with business.
Well, they may be operating on hope, and certainly that's a miserable way to plan, but governmentally supported organizations do seem to think hope is far more interesting and far more important than actually doing things. But my point is this, that what we have is companies now who are saying, we are forced to close our plant because it doesn't comply with governmental regulations. And now all of a sudden, there's been no change in governmental regulations. All of a sudden, they've got 2 more years or more We don't know the answer to that. There may be a very logical answer to it, but the simple fact is that our governments, our utilities, we know that just the fifth year, I believe, in a row, maybe the sixth year in a row, that Muskegon County wastewater system just increased the cost of your sewer bills. We know water bills have gone up significantly. We are being faced with governments that are acting as if they are at war with us. They're buying military vehicles. They're charging prices. We're finding that, of course, they're shrinking the options that we're going to have for getting energy and stuff. So it does seem to me that this event that's coming up in a couple of weeks is of real value, because we have to protect ourselves from what may very well be serious electrical outages and who knows what down the road. We know that these electrical outages have been happening heavily in the past. So anyway, I'm very likely to attend this, but I'm much more interested in how I can protect myself when the governmental services, just like they have in Greece, disappear because there's no more money to pay the people to provide them.
I got to tell you, for me, yes, all of that's true. The things that I touched on with like the Army tank and all of that's true. But moving to a more day-to-day, if there were just some kind of natural crisis, which we see in the news every week, there's some fire or some earthquake or some drama somewhere where people are out of power, to your point. They may not be able to have access to emergency care. There's all kinds of things that have happened in Ohio and all over out west, certainly, and down south. And so we have a tendency sometimes, or maybe it's me, I have a tendency sometimes of feeling maybe over safe, more safe than nature should allow me to think. But to your points of why should a person with just normal concerns have an interest in it, they're going to be talking about things like solar panels and other solar power options, data backup and recovery, which is important in an emergency loss, water filtration systems, which goes to your point about losing government utilities, or even if you're home on a well, if it's pumped by electric and there's a shortage or a brownout, like we've heard a million times, all of these things become an issue. Generators and backup systems, alternative energies and other methods, and then in just general education programs. And that's just the chunk that I read off their list that pertains to power. They're also going to be talking about things like ham radio and other communication lines.
Very important.
And it's hugely important, because one of the things we keep seeing over and over with Katrina, with the fires out west, with all of these natural disasters, is that along with power, the other thing that you lose is the communication that says, I'm here and I'm in trouble. So what do we do about that?
Well, I again, more and more we are finding that we're going to have to take a lot more responsibility for how our lives and our families' lives are going to be affected by events. The biggest, most widespread power outages in the United States had nothing to do with earthquakes or hurricanes or anything else. They had to do with the grid just falling down in and of itself. And there's been very, very little interest, apparently, on government's part in fixing that. So I would love to see our Cobb plant continue on, but I'm not going to believe the old phrase, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you.
No, I believe the phrase that says, I'm from the government and I'm here to tax you, and it's none of your business what we do with the dough.
Well, if we at least got the service, that would be one thing. But it's another thing, as the poor folks in Detroit have found, they pay the taxes and they're not getting the services.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me ask you this, kind of an offhanded question, but do you have a preparedness plan for you and Honey Bunch?
Yes, I do. I have a list of liberals in my neighborhood, and I have a bunch of guns. So if things really collapse, I'm going to take my guns and I'm going to go to the liberals' houses and take their stuff.
That's their plan. You got to have a plan.
They
for
don't
yourself.
have guns. The liberals have told us they don't have guns.
Speaking of guns and ammo, and all jokes aside on that point, now listen, if you had some kind of natural crisis tomorrow and you had to defend your family, there's a huge ammo shortage. I mean,
not at my house. There isn't.
I wondered where the nation's supply went, Jim.
I have plenty of guns. I have plenty of ammo. It's funny. I'm saving a milk gallon, milk jugs, and other things. It's amazing. It's very simple. Just add a small amount of chlorine, and you can save and store your own water without having to buy expensive water. And I'm saving a certain amount of food. But yes, I agree. Typically, when there's going to be a serious outage, it's less than 5 days. We're not in a hurricane area, but the electrical grid, the more and more I read about the electrical grid, and of course, as you just said, that's going to take care of your radios. It's going to take care of your well, even though you've got your own water out back. You're not going to get water if the electrical is down, and on and on. Well, your heat, the fan to push your furnace in the winter. So I do think, sadly, we are going to see more of this coming down the road. Europe is certainly seeing it all over. And so here's a great place for us to go to get some ideas on how to protect ourselves and our families.
Part of it on the power side is just math. We have an ever-growing population and draw on power, but we've got a system that's 1970s and back in terms of its when it was produced as technical level. I mean, there's no question that there's going to be breaks in that system as we go forward. But I got to interject something just for fun. While we're talking, I received a text from Barb Vanderveen, who's still on the road driving back from the Mackinac Island, and her text was kind of laughing because while we were talking, she missed her exit, so she had to turn around and go back to wherever it was that she missed it at. But she did send us an email, and it's a quote of Abraham Kuyper. Are you familiar with him?
Never heard of him.
When principles that run against your deepest convictions begin to win the day, then battle is your calling, and peace has become sin. You must, at the price of dearest peace, lay your convictions bare before friend and enemy with all the fire of your will. What do you think of that?
I'm not quite sure I get it. It was kind of long, and, I'm old.
With all the fire of your faith. I'm sorry, I missed the final word.
Well, so you have to know the whole thing.
I got to tell you,
that kind of matters.
Jeepers.
Did she text us on the way while she's driving?
No, I'm speculating.
Usually you can text verbally. You got voice recognition.
No, I think she's pulled over somewhere after she got back to her exit. Sure. But having said all of that...
Well, that's important to you, but what does it mean to you?
What it mean exactly. That's really the paramount question. I think first is she's talking about faith in general, faith in God. But aside from that, she's also talking about standing up for what you believe is right. And frankly, that should be this should be your creed. That's what you're always talking about.
Well, I think that you clearly are standing up for what you believe. I think I have been shown to do the same, and many of us have. I think I would take it to the next level. If we want to support, or if those who want our support, like the Republican Party, expect to earn our support, and not just expect knee-jerk, they're Republicans, they're going to get our vote. They need to earn it. They need to be aware that they need to earn it. And I would suggest to them, and I think Barb hit the nail on the head too, they need to convey to us why they have earned it and should earn it in the future. Very few of us today, and this was brought up earlier in the conversation, very few of us who are Republicans today in Michigan can quickly say, what do the Republican Party here in our state stand for? What are the victories? Why should I be a proud Republican? If our Republican elected leaders, if the Republican establishment and the state party itself really cares about winning elections and bringing citizens in, they need to articulate that message so that every one of us has it right on the tip of their tongue. And as a political junkie as I am, it's not on the tip of my tongue.
I got to tell you, I got to push back a little bit, Jim, because for me, those things that are Republican and as a Republican Party, what does it mean to me? Anybody with Google, just Google the word for definition, Republicanism, with small r, not the party. It's limited government. It's free from an overwhelming government. It's free from socialism. So when I read this quote that Barb shared with us, when principles that run against your deepest convictions begin to win the day, then battle is your calling. And for me, that's no surrender, no retreat, not one more inch.
Well, that's a nice book description, but we just have, within the last month in the state of Michigan, the Republicans expanded Medicaid to the tune of 400 to 600,000 people and to the cost of hundreds of millions of dollars. They are in the midst right now, led by the Republican leadership, of putting in a new tax on internet purchases, and they just, to the tune of $20 million, had a massive increase voted across the board, top to bottom, Republicans, on hunting and fishing fees. So, yes, I love your nice definition of Republicanism. The problem is their acts speak far louder than their words.
I agree with everything you said. The only caveat I would add to that is that when you paint with such a wide brush and say the Republicans did that, the reality of it is that less than a third of the elected Republicans joined with the Socialist Democrat Party and did that. So we can't say the two-thirds that stood up for limited government, liberty, and freedom, we can't paint them out of the picture because one-third, including O. Snyder, have lost his way. Now, as like I mentioned to Barb, once we get past the primary, whatever the people elect, whatever they decide, whatever candidates they decide to elect, then certainly I'll stick with them. But in the meantime, I'm fighting to get rid of the kind of Republican that would promote the list of things that you just articulated so well.
Well, I need just to add to this. I agree with you.
I knew that.
The problem is that we know that list of negatives. The Republican Party in our state has done a very poor job of letting us know what are the victories.
Well, I think that's very true.
Give me the top three, quick.
I think that well, I can think
Right to work is one.
Right to work is certainly one.
Give me two more.
I'm stumped.
There we go.
I'm done. I don't disagree with you, but it goes back to what I said. If you've got near a polarity,
if that's the entire only thing that people, junkies like you, junkies like me, can come up with is the freedom to work or right to work, then someone has done a very poor job, and I don't think it's you or I think it's the Republican Party establishment.
Before I run out of time today, two last things. First off, it's my second oldest daughter's birthday. Sarah is 31 years old today.
Oh my golly. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to Sarah. And each time 31, I must be getting really old, Jim.
You are.
Oh, thanks.
I'm sitting here looking at you, and baby, it's painful.
I was thinking, I was going to say, put the bag back on. Boy, what a friendly group we got on here today, Oscar. The other thing is I want everyone to make sure that they're on next week because we're going to have the expert on that Great Lakes Emergency Preparedness Expo. Tell us what it really is. And I expect you're going to be here also?
I'll be here. Sounds like fun.
Oscar, you got to be here or the show don't happen. We've proven that.
All right. I guess so.
Very nice. See you next Sunday, everybody. Thank you.
That's Spirit in the Sky.
Yes, it is.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Welcome. You're listening to the Renegade River Show. My name is Mike Hewitt, and I'm in the studio with Jim Riley.
Hey, good afternoon, folks.
And on the line with us is Barb Vanderveen, and Barb is the Republican 2nd Congressional District Chairperson. Barb, welcome to the Renegade River Show.
Thanks. Happy to be on.
I appreciate your calling in. Just for listeners, are you still up on the Mackinac Island, Barb?
I'm on my way home from Mackinac Island.
Very, very nice. And what I'm hoping to get you to do today for us is give the folks, well, a little bit of background probably to start with, if we could. So some listeners that may not know what the Mackinac Republican Leadership Conference is. Tell us about it. What is it, Barb?
It's every 2 years, so a biannual get-together that we have with grassroots and leadership in the Republican Party for the state of Michigan. And it's just a time of regrouping and networking and firing up the troops as we head into a major election for 14.
Very
and
nice.
then for 16 for sure.
Now, it's always located on Mackinac Island. Is that right, at the Grand Hotel?
As far as I've known about it, so maybe in the past it wasn't, but as far as I've known, it has been, yes.
Now, I've not been in a couple of them. I think the last one I attended was in 2006, and I've been to a couple of them, but it's fairly, as I recall it...
Congressmen, state representatives, state senators, and then, of course, the national names that they brought in, Rand Paul, Bobby Jindal, Karl Rove, Governor Wallace.
I would have liked to have heard Governor Jindal talk.
Oh, my word. He is what did it for me. I mean, I came out of that thinking, wow, I think we have a chance to have a really exciting candidate for the next presidential election. Rand Paul was good as well, but
Right.
I love Bobby Jindal.
Now, were there those two folks are obviously contemplating a run, but were there other people there, Barb, that you could guess were considering a run?
Yeah, Governor Walker was there from Wisconsin.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just
Yeah.
let me just kind of dovetail a short story in, if I might. I spent a little less than a year over at over in Green Bay, Wisconsin, doing some work for an organization, but I happened to be there right during the time that the recall campaign was going on. And Barb, that had to be the single ugliest politics that I've ever seen in my life. I'd get off the plane in Milwaukee, and each time I went, by the way, when I'd fly in, I'd land in Milwaukee and then drive up to Green Bay. But each time I would land, I would be greeted at the end of the when you're walking up the ramp from the plane into the terminal, I'd be greeted by signature people that were trying to gather petitions.
Yep.
And I'd say, "Hey, I'm from Michigan." They know that's okay. Sign here. And I'd say, "Hey, I'm a leader in the Tea Party movement, so probably that isn't going to happen today." Okay.
Yeah.
But at any rate, that was good times. But I would have liked to have heard him speak. I certainly saw him deal with some tough circumstances while I was in Wisconsin.
Right. Governor Thune was there as well. And Ryan Stramus, the chair of the National Republican Party, was there. Our National Committee man, Dave Agema, National Committee woman, Terry Land. And then, of course, the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader, Randy Richardville. So lots of names.
Tell me something. Does it for Terry Land, as in terms of her being a candidate for U.S. Senate here in Michigan? Were there any other candidates, primary Republican candidates, looking to get in that race that showed up and spoke?
No one else that spoke, and Terry didn't actually speak in the capacity as a candidate. She spoke as our National Committee woman. But Rob Steele was up there, networking, because it's a really great place to meet a lot of people in one small area.
No question. We've had Dr. Steele on this show before, and there's one intelligent fellow right there, I'll tell you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, no question about that. Well, tell me, were there any surprises that were this weekend you discovered?
Not from my perspective. I guess maybe the media was a little surprised that the Tea Party did not come out with their surprise, quote, quote, candidate to run against Governor Snyder. But from my perspective, there was no surprises, no.
Coming up to this, I think and where that comes from, frankly, is from people like me. That said, I think there appears to have been a lot of division. There appears to have been a lot of division in the party, and I'm wondering, did the conference help to calm some of that?
I'm not sure if it did or not. That was certainly a focus. I don't think there was a speaker up there that didn't talk about unity and how important it was, and that was across the board in every meeting, no matter who was the speaker. And it's true. I was talking before we came on air with Jim Riley, and we can't win if we're divided. So, but whether or not, it actually sunk in remains to be seen, I guess.
Well, Barb, there was a discussion. Apparently, this wasn't set up on the stage. It was widely reported, and it might not have even hit you folks up there in Mackinac. But Senator Rand Paul had a get-together at some point over the last couple days with reporters. And at that time, he said that the way it's written here was he conceded, quote, "We probably can't defeat or get rid of Obamacare," and then went on in a very pragmatic and I would say probably practically minded analysis of what was likely to go forward. But here in Michigan, we do have a very serious dispute. Certainly, a lot of issues matter, but the single most important, most recent one was the passing of the expansion of Medicaid here in the state.
Right.
What kind of discussions came about?
Most of the elected Republican leadership, along with grassroots voters, electorate, precinct delegates like myself and Jim Riley. Is that a fair statement?
Yep, it is, absolutely.
Okay.
And a lot of college kids are over there as well. It was very exciting to see the number of youth that were there.
Yeah, that part is the future, because I think the other side of the political spectrum likes to claim the youth for themselves, and I got to tell you, that's not what I see when I'm out traveling.
Yeah, that's not what I see either. When I visit the different county parties that I'm involved with in the 2nd District. But that's why it's so exciting on the island. And I think the fact that the Republican Party is starting to finally get up with the times as far as technology is going to help tremendously.
Absolutely with that. Now, were there a lot of speakers that were engaging the folks up there?
More speakers than you could possibly get to hear. There was something going pretty much from 8 o'clock in the morning till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Yeah, I saw on Facebook yesterday, actually early this morning, where someone was talking about she was waiting for Senator Rand Paul. It was midnight and he hadn't appeared yet. So it sounds like
they kept him so busy.
Yeah, that's what I got the impression from just reading comments that they had that fella all over the island.
Yes. Absolutely.
Oh, well, what was Governor Snyder there and folks like that?
Governor Snyder, Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley, Secretary of State Ruth Johnson,